That's what needs to be done in the United States. If you do not test everybody, then you do not know who is infected. And then you have asymptomatic carriers, especially young Black men with beards, who are moving freely among their family and friends and associates, and they're spreading the virus far and wide, unknowingly, because no one ever tested them to find out that they actually are infected. And the fact that they have no symptoms, that doesn't matter. What matters is that they're spreaders. And let me just say something.
Good morning, everybody. This is the WEBT Afteraction broadcast. We're scheduled to start around 9 o'clock. We're just waiting for people to come on. My name is Doug, and I'm the producer and engineer for today. And we're just waiting for the other participants. You will be hearing, as the radio checks come in, you will be hearing those. And we'll keep them available both over, that are running simultaneously over both networks. And in the meantime, we will be replaying some audio from Dr. Salim's webinar, for lack of a better term, about the COVID and taking questions from people from around the country. So we'll go back to that, and as the participants come in, we'll be getting started shortly. Thank you.
Your bandana around your face is not going to help you very much, because the weave of that cloth is much bigger than 3 microns. And that droplet or that virus is just going to go right through like there's nothing there at all. There's no protection whatsoever. They're only telling you that. They're only talking about social distancing because they do not have authentic, genuine, effective.
Standing by.
Now, control ID 555, I'm in New York, and my situation is I will be sending back to $1,000. Over.
Standing by until 1000 hours. Network control stand by.
Network control, this is mobile 10. Network control, this is mobile 10.
Proceed, mobile 10.
The Afteraction live broadcast is open and available. We're waiting for the other participants to come in on the guests who are coming on the live broadcast. But we are open, and the chat room is open on YouTube at WEBT Afteraction Report, April 20, 4.20. Over.
Program is open at WEBT. Afteraction report, April 20th, 12. That affirmative, over.
It's 4.20.20. Affirmative.
And 4.0.0. That's 4.
Network control user 29 doesn't even know at this point how to even turn the unit on. So I'll have to start from scratch with it. Over.
Hey, Rooster 29, when you're ready to test, give me a call and I'll walk you through it. Over.
Thank you, Rooster 29 out.
Network control standing by. This is Harlem Emergency Network, Harlem Information and Emergency Network. This is Stern One sitting in as network control. Message for today is the date, Monday, April 20th, 2020. Time is 08:32. The temperature today is 50 degrees, high of 59, low of 48. Wind is 3 miles an hour, 0% chance of rain. Visibility is 10 miles. And all hand activities will be in effect. That is the Tuesday meeting and the Wednesday class. I don't have the information for the YouTube as of yet. As soon as I get it, I will forward it to everyone. This network control standing by. This is Harlem Information and Emergency Network. Time is now 09:04. Message for today, starting with the weather. Temperature is 50 degrees. The wind is 3 miles an hour, 0% chance of rain. Visibility is 10 miles an hour, 10 miles. All hen activities will be in effect this week. And this is on network control standing by. Time is now 09:04.
Network control, this is Benoit 1 calling for a radio check. Over.
Benoit 1, network control, read you loud and clear. How do you read network control? Over.
Network control, I read you 5 by 5. I am in Fishkill, New York, and my situation is safe. I will be standing by to the 1000th hour. Over.
Fishkill, New York, and your situation is safe, then you'll be standing by until the 1000th hour. Network control standing by. All units. WEBT, Afteraction report on YouTube is now on, and you can tune it in on YouTube at WEBT. That's Wally, Echo, Bravo, Tango. After action report 4.20.20. 20. That's WEBT Afteraction Report 4.20.20. Network controls standing by.
This is Coag 1 calling network control for radio chat. Over.
Coag 1's network control reads loud and clear. How do you read network control? Over.
This is Coag 1. I read network control loud and clear. My location is 109th Street, 1st Avenue, and my situation is safe and normal. Over.
Located at 109th Street and 1st Avenue. Situation is safe and normal. Thank you. Thank you. This is network control standing by.
That's a copy. Would you like me to try on the radio? Over.
That's affirmative, please.
This is Coag 1 to network control. Over.
Coag network control reads loud and clear. How do you read network?
This is Coag 1. I read network control loud and clear. This is Coag 1. Let me change my location. My reception is a little fuzzy. Oh. This is Coag 1 to network control. How do you read me? Over.
I'm gonna give you a count: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do you read network control? Over.
Coag 1 read network control 2 by 5. Over.
This is normal location.
I always have a lot of problems when I'm upstairs in my apartment. There's a lot of scaffolding and metal and stuff out here now, so it changes my reception. Over.
Okay, give a call back when you go down. You don't have to do it right now. When you get in another location, give a call back, please.
That's a copy.
Network control standing by.
Network control, radio check.
Network control reads loud and clear. How do you read network control? Over.
I read you 4 by 5, and I also heard the other caller. I was reading her 5 by 5. Over.
That's a 10-4. All right. So network control standing by.
Mobile 10, clear. YouTube channel is clear, by the way.
See on that YouTube.
YouTube channel is open broadcasting clear. We're using a camera from 125th Street, and it's live, and we're repeating the updates from the day over the channel. Clear.
So, standing by. Over. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Anytime you see the person who's standing by. Again, please. That's an affirmative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's your last reading. Give me a time again, please. That's affirmative, CO. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Over. Thank you. Not a problem. Number 2, standing by. And location is 7th Avenue, 27th Street. Situation, please. Situation is excellent. And I'll try to get to that video to go along with you. After that, this network control standing by. When you get a chance, you can also test your radio. Over. Network controls not the people at the point how the I'll have to start with people over. Hey, 29, when you're ready to test, call and I'll walk you through. This 29. Network control standing by. This time emergency network, calling information and emergency network. This is turn 116 as well network control. Message for today is 8, Monday, April 20th, 2020. Time is 08, really 32. The temperature today is 9, over 48. Wind is 3 miles an hour, 0% chance of rain. Going to be 10 miles. And all 10 activities will be in effect. That is the Tuesday meeting and the Wednesday class. I don't have the information as of yet. As soon as I get it, I will forward it to everyone. Network controllers stand by. Information and emergency network. Time is now 09:04. Message for today. Starting with the weather. Temperature 50 degrees. Wind is 3 miles an hour, 0% chance of rain. 10 miles an hour. 10 miles. All 10 activities will be in effect this week. Network control standing by. The Solomon Emergency Network, Solomon Information and Emergency Network. This is 916 and Webt Network Control. Message for today is date, Monday, April 20th, 2020, 08, really 32. The temperature today is 9, over 48. Wind is 3 miles an hour, 0% chance of rain. All 10 activities will be in effect. That is the Tuesday meeting and the Wednesday class. I don't have the information for the YouTube as of yet. As soon as I get it, I will forward it to everyone. Network control stand by. Information and emergency network. Time is now 09:04. Message for today. Starting with the weather. Temperature 50 degrees. Wind is 3 miles an hour, 0% chance of rain. 10 miles an hour, 10 miles. All 10 activities will be in effect this week. This is network control standing by. Time is now.
Morning. Anybody home?
Good morning.
Hey Doug, how you doing?
The previous, this morning's radio test. That's what you had in the background.
Until the 1000 hour.
So when nobody's here, I play that so that people can, in case they miss hearing themselves. And of course, it's being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
They need to get the WEBT logo. I mean, background. I don't know what that would be, but you need to have that.
Say again?
I said, maybe you ought to get that WEBT background.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Yeah, just to have a little flavor there,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with that, maybe the WEBT logo would be apropos. I don't know. Oh, I got to say, we're going to do the, because I'm also, I just remember that we also are broadcasting over on the website at HCR.online. I forgot that. I've been testing the Timbo stream capabilities for it. Did you get that?
Sorry, say it again? No, I didn't.
Oh yeah, you was preoccupied. No, I'm saying that I have, I'm simul-streaming over at EHCR.online.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so they're getting, you know, we're getting the double broadcast.
Cool.
Well, simul stream, I think that's would be the more appropriate term.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're on YouTube. And, oh, let me record this. I forgot to record it. So that we have so that we have full functionality.
For what?
Excuse me, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say what you thought I said. I didn't. I know it's against the law. Hold on. I'm looking. Okay, here we go. Just kidding.
Western Avenue. My status is normal. My situation is normal. My status is safe.
When I'm on the radio school, I can hear the lady. When I'm on my terrestrial radio school, just for your information,
Mhm.
I can hear. There was a lady called in from 109th Street and First Avenue inside her apartment. And I can hear her. She was on the radio.
It's 109th Street, East Side?
Yeah, she's got a radio. I mean, not the cell thing. She's got an extra radio. And I could hear her on the radio from her radio. I could hear it in here. Wally could hear her 2x5. But sorry about that. But I'm just saying it to say that I'm pretty sure we'll be able to hear it in building.
Mhm.
From the location that we talked about yesterday. I'm more than certain of that. And she kind of proved it this morning. So if I can hear her sitting all the way over here, and she's in her apartment on the bed, I know you can hear it from the building. Are you testing your radio?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it charged. It's very finicky. The charging thing is very finicky.
Yeah, you got to put it in there a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't push it to the back, it won't turn it. It ain't gonna until the light turns on. But I could hear you trying to make a transmission. I don't know why that is. Why is it working from your location all of a sudden? Has there been some upgrading?
No. Let me see if there's a. I got very little battery. I'm gonna try.
Oh, maybe I'm hearing you over the over this. And
yeah, that's right. You hear? That's what you're doing.
Never mind.
Okay, now it's charging. Okay.
You mean charging?
Yeah, got the red light.
Oh yeah, charging. Okay, so I thought I was hearing you on my radio, and I was really hearing you. On the YouTube channel, I'm using the video from the Plaza Cam. So today, today, oh, you can see it. Yeah, today, today we're looking at the Plaza Cam. Oh, you do have the EBT emergency logo. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, man. So, okay, so we're good. So where's at the network? Who's the network control operator today? Standby one, I guess. He's taking on he's doing the network control duties for some reason.
Okay, what's the name of the Ustream YouTube stream somebody's looking for?
There's no Ustream.
Name?
There's no Ustream.
I'm YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay. YouTube is WEBT Afteraction Report. We have the station out there, so my bad. You know, we're broadcasting over the default community network.
Afteraction report.ehcr?
No, it's the Afteraction Report and the date.
Dot what? Oh, the date.
4.20.20.
thank you. Get that tomorrow.
And what's happening? Status is safe. And mine to my power. And that package follow. Network control. And
Network control. Look up to 1000 hours. Thank you for the package tomorrow. Over.
Okay, that was 921. That was the last broadcast over the radio network. Oh, so they're shaming, loan shaming people in the way that they gave out the loans. I'm just noticing on here that because they had a big report of the money that was, for the small businesses. They gave 2 restaurant chains, 3 chains got $10 million apiece. Even though one of them made $42 million last year. So they also got money from these people got money from the small business loan. And Shake Shack has decided they got outed yesterday too that they have received $10 million. And then now today they're reporting that they're giving the $10 million back. Because they didn't need it in the first place. So why did they apply, Stu?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then they got all these, now they talking about they ran out of business. They did what they usually do. People, they gave the money to the people who are in the pipeline. That's how they were able to spend, or not spend it, but reserve, $300 billion in 14 days.
Hmm.
Imagine that, $350 billion in 14 days, and it's all gone.
Wow.
Right. And none of the little guys got diddly. I'm using diddly instead of Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I was in diddly squat.
I got you.
That might be a colloquial term, by the way. I don't know. So now they're figuring out that the loan program has left a lot of people out of the loop, as usual.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, most of them are thinking that they should open everything back up. And right now, I'm looking at the death counter. Something's going on when you have a death counter on TV.
Every day, 24/7.
Right. The nonstop. I mean, you can't get away from it. It's 40,643 deaths, not people sick. 40,643 deaths, and these jackasses. That's for jackasses. Are talking about they're going to let people go back outside and go to work. And they've had almost 800,000 cases of people who have contracted the disease. That I think it's good to go outside. More people have died than in the Korean War. So.
Yeah. And I saw an interesting piece. You probably caught it too on Joy Reid yesterday, and she was talking about the actual population, describing the population of people that are lobbying, particularly in Michigan and other states, to reopen. And she said that in addition to them being all white, that they were for the most part business owners, not workers, but business owners trying to get their businesses jumpstart, trying to get their workers to come back to work and put themselves in harm's way so they could keep on making their money.
I saw that actually.
Yeah.
And obviously I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
Globally, 2,355,558 confirmed cases of the pandemic disease, whatever you want to call that disease. 165,370 people died worldwide. That's as of 4:57 a.m. this morning. So that's not counting over the last 4 hours who's died in the last 4 hours. Pretty soon they'll have another clock over there to tell you how many people died per second.
Yeah. I remember it was a couple of weeks ago, we were hearing that somebody was dying in the US like every minute or two. And that was a couple of weeks back.
Right. And, you know, so they're almost a quarter of a million people in New York have contracted whatever they call that thing. 85,000 in New Jersey, 38,000 in Pennsylvania. Wow. So stunning. And for them I saw those people going outside. And I said to my, what struck me in the mind was that why they're going there, it didn't make any sense that they were there protesting. It's illogical. And so I brought into Joy Reid's theory analysis because there's no police stick keeping you from going outside, Stuart. Anybody can go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just voluntarily staying inside. And they was protesting the voluntarily order to stay inside.
Right. Right.
With guns.
Mm-hmm.
They were standing with guns, and I kept saying, why don't they just go outside and breathe on each other? Nobody cares. They're not going to get the people who don't want to come outside to come outside. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you know, it makes sense when you look at the economic factor and who they are and who it is that they want to come outside. Is they want their workers to come back to work. So that's the, you know, unstated agenda.
So even that doesn't make any sense, okay? I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, it makes sense as all you care about is your money and your workers are expendable.
I would take the position that that idea doesn't make sense. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm saying that the idea that you would think it's okay for other people to go out and get sick so you can make money doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't make any sense from the worldview that you and I and most people have. But you know, there's some folks that you know really don't give a darn about other folks.
I don't understand that logic.
Yeah, that's not logical, but it is.
Yeah, and I don't know why people even find that. I mean, again, they were outside protesting the voluntary order to stay at home. There's no police. You're not getting arrested if you come outside. It was a voluntary instructions throughout the country, and the places that did it, for you to stay inside for your own good and everybody else's good. Now, they was outside violating that and didn't care. I don't know if did you see the black guy who was a nurse on the show?
I don't think I did. On Joy Reid show, no.
There was a black guy who came on there and he called those people who were out there idiots because they were blocking the way to get to the hospital. Said, I'm working in the hospital, you damn fools.
Wow.
What he said, suppose it's your mother or your infant son or somebody that needs help, and you're standing there blocking it because you protesting the voluntary request to stay home. You're protesting that. Some of them were out there with weapons, which tells me that they need to institute the insurance program or registration program like they do for cars for the weapons. And then you'll see people won't be walking around flaunting a whole bunch of weapons anymore. And they should make it so that everybody can have a weapon. It's like anybody can drive a car. If you're a convicted felon, you can drive a car. They should make it so anybody can get a weapon. I bet you they'll change those fucking laws then.
Okay, I got to do my my morning radio check. So
check.
I'm gonna mute myself here for the feedback.
Network control, WEAT, loud and clear, 555. Location. Yes, network control, WEAT, located in Woodstock, New York. Condition is status. Yes, I did. Thank you for your response. Over.
Okay.
Wow, Stu, we caught that.
What's that?
We caught that.
Good.
Yeah, but you know, nice and cool. One was trying to test something in there for a second, and they caught it. So I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was trying to do something, but he's okay. The other thing, Stu, that I wanted to mention. Turn your thing down, Stu, over there.
Yeah, go ahead.
She's doing a radio check.
Yolanda's trying to come in.
Wait a minute.
Network control, I need you 5x5.
Location, your status.
Hey, Ro.
Hey, what's up? How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good.
Do a radio check, Stu. Do a radio check, Stu.
Safe.
Hey, I'm gonna try to put on a picture or something.
I can hear you, bro.
Okay. Hey, what's up?
All right, we can hear you, man. Hey, Stu.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, the other thing that I was going to mention to you is that they had, hold on.
Can't find the base, so I don't know how much I
Yeah, Stu. So they had,
Okay. That's why we have the radio status.
I think that's Mark talking.
Oh, Mark is.
That's him. He's looking for his base for his other radio. So, what you did play something on there that.
Network control is loud and clear. Are you in network control? Over. Radio check. Network control, stand by.
And so she had on the program, she played a 7-minute speech of Barack Obama actually endorsing Joe Biden. And the things that he said on this. Never get tired of hearing that, Stu. Sorry.
I couldn't hear. What was it?
Oh, you didn't hear it?
No,
No, I didn't hear it either.
it was garbled.
Oh, okay. It was the station ID for East Harlem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so anyway, we're broadcasting live on YouTube. and on EHCR.online by way of identification. This is the W Emergency Broadcast Team's After Action Report. We have in the studio Stuart A. Reed, who's number 2 and number 1 over at the WBT. He's number 1 at WBT. Also on the line is our outside reporter, Mr. Rolando Hudson, and hopefully, he'll show us some pictures from his balcony or something before it's too long. And of course, me, Doug Frazier, also on the line in the background. We're listening to the WBT radio check, and of course, the chat room on YouTube is open, and so we're prepared. So, Stu, I was telling you about she played a speech on AM Joy Reid yesterday of Barack Obama's endorsement of Joe Biden. It's about 7 minutes long, and I got to say to you, when I was listening to that guy, his endorsement speech was so moving. I actually had tears in my eyes.
Really? Wow, that's crazy.
That's how moving his endorsement speech was, in talking about some of the things that are going on today, and what people should be doing. So he was not only talking about some of the things that was going on today, but he was talking about what needs to happen moving down the road and how people should come together. You saw what a real leader, what someone who has the ability to use lots of wonderful words and motivate people. It was astounding.
Yeah, I caught the last 5 minutes or so of it, and I was struck also, just by his breadth of understanding about what's going on, his analysis of the situation, and as you just mentioned, what we need to do to go forward. And he talked much more about that than he did Joe Biden, which was fine with me. Yeah. But he talked about the leadership that was needed, the coordination that was needed. He talked about everybody looking out for each other. And, I thought it was interesting. He also contrasted, he said something to the effect that, well, if I were running today, I would not run on the same platform or with the same things that I talked about 12 years ago because of what's going on. And these are the issues today, and this is what needs to be addressed. And you're right, it was powerful.
It was very powerful. It made you realize the lack of powerfulness and the idea of now where you have someone who takes credit for anything, gives himself credit for anything that's good, and blames everybody else for anything that's bad, and admits no mistakes. And it was the contrast was stunning, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Which I sent out I sent you a copy of that article where the guy was predicting or postulating that Michelle Obama would be the guy's running mate. And of course, we've discussed this ourselves personally now. And when I say that because I see that other people also see that. And in that particular article, the guy said that Trump would be in trouble if Michelle Obama would come in. I know Bob came in and sent me an email earlier saying that was all speculation. Now, he's absolutely right. Of course, it's speculation. But this is the time where speculation could count, particularly after you see people there violating themselves and violating everybody else by going into public places to protest a voluntary stay-at-home order. Got to be one of the dumbest things you ever heard of.
Yeah. Back to the Michelle Obama thing. I haven't had a chance to read that story, but I just wanted to comment on another discussion I saw on Joy Reid yesterday, where they were talking about potential running mates for Biden. Of course, he said he would pick a female. And I thought one of the strongest points that I heard from one of the panelists was that he needed to pick somebody that not was just acceptable to the Black community in particular, but someone who actually engendered enthusiasm in the Black community in order to turn out the vote. And this particular person was advocating for Stacey Adams in Atlanta, who I very much admire. but the same thing would happen. You would generate the same kind of enthusiasm with Michelle Obama. And I thought the commentator was right. Picking someone that is just okay, I don't think that's going to win the day.
Yeah, because he's just okay. That's why.
Right. That's right. Exactly. He is just okay, just barely okay.
Yeah, barely okay. This is another dopey old white guy. I don't care what anybody says. He's a dopey old white guy, because they all are. And you know, when you're old, you can call somebody dopey and old. So I did.
Yeah.
And I saw that, I saw that segment. And I myself also thought that person was correct. I can't think who the one that said it, which one of the two panelists said it, but I also thought the same thing. And I was thinking about the Stacey Adams, but it dawned on me that she doesn't have anywhere near the kind of experience and enthusiasm that Michelle Obama has.
Oh, Michelle's in a class by herself.
Right.
Nobody can touch her.
She's right there. And you know, I was somebody called me up yesterday and was telling me that that if Michelle Obama was up there and the guy was and Trump was walking behind like he did against Hillary, that there would be a problem. I said, listen, Barack Obama they would have to restrain Barack Obama, because I don't think he would even stand for anybody saying anything or threatening his wife while he's standing there.
Right. Nor would Michelle herself.
That's right. That was without question. But he brought up the fact that Bill Clinton didn't do that, and he cast some aspersions on Bill Clinton for whatever his reason. But I thought about what really came to mind to me was that I didn't see how, if you had Michelle Obama there's no way that well, first she wouldn't do it because she's running for vice president. But if you read the article says that once he gets picked as the vice president, she gets picked as the vice president, and a week later after he gets in, he bows out and gives her the job, which would allow her to stand for 12 years. This is because he's just fulfilled his term. He still will be open. Right. So what I said to him was, there's no way that he would debate her. There's no way that Trump would debate Michelle Obama. No way.
You know, I remember in the very first run, I guess that was 2008 when Barack ran for the first time. And when we finally heard, well, I should say when I first heard Michelle give her address, I said to myself, wow, I think she may be smarter than him. She was absolutely brilliant.
Right.
And in addition to all the emotional female qualities that she has, she is like incredible mind and orator as well. So, you know, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of how powerful
look how rare that is.
Candidate she could be.
Look how rare that is, because Barack Obama is in the class in terms of speaking. He's up there with Martin Luther King and them dudes, man. That dude, man.
Yeah, he's an orator.
What? And look, and you just scratching the surface about what he can do. I mean, he can put some words together, Jim. I mean, he's really good. And so for you to say that for his wife to even be on the same level as him, and now your position that she's maybe even better than him is saying a lot. And she is, he's something else, man. Like I said, I listened to him yesterday. And listened to the Joe Biden thing. And I had tears in my eyes. I was going like, this dude was like saying what needed to be said. This is what he was saying is what people need to hear. They don't need to hear all that stupid, well, you know, the governors, they're not nice to me, and I give them, you know, self-aggrandizing, moronic crap. Because I did a video with Rolando where I made the case that I didn't think that Trump was a real person.
Yeah.
I never got a copy of that video, by the way, Rolando. But,
yeah, I sent you a copy of it. I sent you a copy.
You sent me another copy because I lost it.
All right.
Thank you. Because you did a good job of filming it. And but the point is that I didn't think that Michelle. I think that there's no way that Trump even comes close to even thinking about debating her. He would go in there and be happy to debate Joe Biden because they're two dopey old white guys.
That's right.
He'd be happy to do that, but he's not going to say nothing to no damn Michelle Obama. And like Stacey Adams is nice, and I do like her, but she's not going to bring the people out like what's her name going to do. She's not going to bring the people out. Not like Michelle Obama.
Michelle be a game changer. I mean, absolutely, she turned the tables upside down.
Dude, when you got 40,000 people who have died in like 2 months, which is, the sort of thing with Dr. Phil, he shouldn't even be called a doctor anymore. His moronic statement about, we had X amount of accidents and we didn't close the government down for that. We had X amount of people dying in pools and we didn't close the government down for that. Never mentioning once that, there's 30-something thousand people, almost 40,000 people died. It's happened over 2 damn months.
Right.
Oh, we got a rating check coming. So, and then somebody did some research. Dr. Phil makes $80 million a year still. That's
what?
Yes, $80 million.
Wow.
So that's why he was on TV. He was whining, by the way, man. He was whining. And that's why he was whining. And then come to find out he's not even a real doctor. He gave up his license.
Really?
Yeah. Who put, man?
You're unreadable.
Must be talking to you. It's unreadable. Said somebody's unreadable. That wasn't you.
I don't think so. Let me turn.
No, it wasn't you.
Turn my radio up.
You didn't hit the button. You would have had to hit the button to be unreadable. You know what I mean? Yeah, you ain't do that.
Right.
Yeah, no. But anyway, like back to our conversation, it's clear to me that if you that's Bob's too.
Okay.
That was a real bad corner for him.
Network control, clear. How do you read network control? Over. Read your 5x5 network control.
Lost the back. We almost lost the broadcast. I'm gonna see if I can get this shit up. Oh, sorry for the cursing still. But when
We'll leave for a minute.
I was watching with he's speaking that was Wally and that was Hen 1 and Hen 2 story.
Network control. Noise 1. Radio check. Over. Network control 5x5. I am New York. I am.
You didn't hear the station ID?
It was very garbled. I heard it. I could kind of tell what it was, but it was very garbled. It wasn't clear.
Oh, wow.
If I'm not mistaken, I think you said that we should be watching on YouTube. Is that starting now? And I know you gave the specifics of it. Is that correct? For control. And I just want to say that I will be standing past the 1000 hour. Over.
Watch now. It's at YouTube. Webt Afteraction 20.20.
I can't see how that's garbage still, man. Just blasting through the crib when it comes on.
Yeah, now control this is one standing by. Over.
Wow, that's stunning. Hey, I can't say why. I was annoyed one on the radio check. She's trying to come to the YouTube. Did you hear that, Stu?
No, I didn't.
That was, I'm surprised you couldn't hear the station ID from EHCR because it's like blatantly loud in here.
Well, loud doesn't mean clear.
Good point. I didn't think of that. But it's, yeah, but it comes through very loud and clear in here. I'm surprised why I'm just going to try to find out. Okay, maybe I have to make. Okay, readjust my sound. Hold on, that sounds like Bob's here. Robert! Oh, he came in. Oh, here he is. Bob's here. There's Robert. Good morning, Robert. Oh, his mic's not on yet. He's connecting. Not using his fancy headpiece.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Robert.
How are you?
Robert,
Good, man. How you doing?
Robert, you're using your fancy head thingy, Bobby.
I'm not. I have no headset on.
I know that. That's the point. You fooled me there. I talked to you. I'm glad you came in, Robert.
Sometimes you got to throw the fastball, the curveball, and the slider. Keep people like you off balance.
Yeah, that was a knuckleball, right?
I know. That's exactly what it was. I had a little spit on it too.
I hate that when that happens.
Don't tell.
Well, I'm glad you came in, Robert, because Stu and I was just talking about. We don't want this one to do so. I saw the Obama's endorsement of Joe Biden. I wanted you to see that.
I did not. I saw like 6 seconds of it, but I just like, okay, Obama endorsing Joe Biden. That's not exactly something that I didn't feel like it was necessarily informative. Although I obviously support his endorsement, but I just kind of moved on to other things.
I think you should have watched it, Bob, because, and this is the only reason why I did, because for some reason on AM Joy yesterday, she came on and said, I'm going to play Obama's whole thing in entirety. It's like 7 minutes. And when I watched it, Bob, I was just telling the story. I was moving, I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah, because it brings us back to a time where we had a president. I know.
But no, Bob, he was very, not only that, but he was very, very informative about what things should be done, how we should be moving forward, and he did it all under the guise of endorsing Joe Biden. But he actually rolled in, talked about, he slyly, so smoothly talked about how wicked the lack of leadership that we have, all that stuff. He actually said all those things in a way that makes it, oh, there's a guy that knows how to use some damn words, baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Something you just said, he actually did that. He actually, not only did he make you go, oh, this back to the time we had a real president, he was saying this is what we need going forward. Someone that can bring everybody together and, and be honest and truthful. It was stunning. All he needed in the background was somebody singing the Amazing Grace or the black national anthem, and you would have, jumped up and put your hand over your heart, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, good, Bob.
This has been great too.
He did a talk to the National Mayors Organization last week as well. It didn't get as much play media wise, but I caught it on some, I don't know, I think it was GovTech or something like that, or some site that had the video from it, and it just like he gave the mayors the speech that they should have gotten from the president. So he's still a better president, and he's been gone for 4 years.
Now, Bob, I also sent to mention on the head that
are you putting all the words together, or are you separating them? It's W.
Okay, someone's trying to watch the YouTube.
Right.
Watch it explaining it.
Like Tango. After AFTER space report space 4.20.20 is there. I'm watching it.
You were saying, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's all I had to say. I didn't drink anything.
Hey, Bob, we were kicking around the notion of Michelle Obama being Biden's running mate. What do you think about not just the prospects, but how that would play out or could play out?
Honestly, my feeling on it is that Michelle wants no part of that, and I think if she had, we'd know it already. So I'm not engaging much in that speculation. Obviously, it would throw certainly throw a wrinkle in it from a momentum standpoint. It would be tremendous. There's obviously seems to be some momentum around having a woman, and in particular a Black woman. And obviously we've heard Stacey Abrams, we've heard Kamala Harris. Michelle would definitely galvanize people on, I hate to use the terms left versus right, because I don't think that they're really accurate terms, but I'm just for the sake of time, it would galvanize the left. It would also somewhat galvanize the right, because anything Obama is blah, 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 blah. I mean, the Post had this article. Yeah, Doug, you sent me the article. How the Obamas could get 8 more years in the White House, implying that Michelle being vice president basically puts the Obamas back. And I think that would be the spin that they would go after it with. Oh, you don't want 8 more years of all that good health care and sound management. Why would we want that? So,
I think but 4 years of that, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why do we want 8 years of paradise? Let's just go back to the Hunger Games. Let's go back to this mashup of the Hunger Games meets The Walking Dead. Let's do that.
The description is so accurate.
Yeah. But on the real side, I just think that Michelle Obama, she's it was 8 years in the White House. It was just as hard on her as it was on him. She's had a 4-year breather. I don't know, it's been enough. And I just don't get the sense that she wants to, the level of engagement, commitment, scrutiny, I don't think she wants that. I'm not sure either one of them want that right now. So unless I hear them float something on their side, I don't think that's really going to happen. Remember, right now, Democrats are so desperate. I mean, they're ready to roll a truck up to probably a sterile truck up to Albany and whisk Andy Cuomo away to take him on the campaign trail, and that I'm not necessarily supportive of that either. I will say, and I always say that I think he's done a stellar job of managing this crisis for New York State. I still don't want him as president, and I still have issues with some of his politics. But you can't argue with him being on task on this particular crisis. So,
But remember this, Bob. Once if they were to announce it, that means the shit is real. So you're right. If they announce it, that means it's real because that's a go. Right?
Yeah,
now,
that's true.
We're in the speculation phase to see who people think, and you actually concurring with everything that Stu and I said, even though you weren't here. You actually concurred with us. We thought that the benefits were exactly what you said they would be. That's what you said they would be. And we concurred that she would raise the enthusiasm bar. What we didn't think of was what you said, that they may use that the dopey guys that are in charge now would use that against her, but
well, they will, but I think that's a negligible difference, because I think the people who are against her, they're going to be rabid against anyone, and so yes, they'll use that as a rallying cry. But there's fragmentation. You know, I mean, what's interesting is that you know, his policy to erode his own base by sending him out into a pandemic. You know, which my prediction is like a lot of the people in the red states who are now defying the stay-at-home orders. I you know, I do the math and I figure around mid-June and July, you know, a lot of them are going to suffer symptoms, and a certain amount of them will probably die as a result of their actions. And then that's going to start to fragment some of his base. You know, I mean, not all of them. Some of them will go to the grave, you know, singing Trump's praises. You know, and some of them who are going to lose somebody, and it's like, why did he send us out there, and why did he tell us it was safe? You know, he told us it was a hoax. Blah 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 blah. It was like that couple out in Arizona that took the fish tank version of hydrochloroquine, and the husband died, and the wife is all of a sudden woke up and said Trump is a monster, you know. And it's like, you know, he was a monster before you listened to him. He gave you a few warning signs before he gave you the bad prescription. So I think there's going to be some erosion of his own base that helps, just because that's the one thing that can maybe wake up cognitive dissonance, is losing a loved one, losing your parents or your spouse or even your kid to you know, stupidity. That's like a cold slap in the face that might be enough to wake up even the sleepiest of that crew.
hey Bob, I just want to mention that Benoit 2 is in the chat room and they're watching, and also Mark Mathie,
Okay, right.
He's on the line as well. Just wanted to mention that.
Oh, good. Well, shout out to Mark McPhee. He's been, you know, fighting a good fight. Shout out to Benoit too, who's you know, he's our own no limit soldier here on the Hen team. And you know, shout out to all of us for just you know, trying to figure out a way out of this nonsense. But like I like to say, you know, we're just talking about the earthquake. You know, we got to be concerned with the tsunami, which is the economic impact of all this stuff. You know, I think that we are, you know, I think we're on the other side of the mountain in terms of the cases going downward here in New York now. Not out of the woods by any means. Particularly, I don't know if you guys have seen the zip code map, but Bronx, Manhattan, particularly the Bronx, has been hit very, very hard. Here in Upper Manhattan, East Harlem is the hottest hotspot. But in the Bronx, there are 16 zip codes that are hotspots.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so you know, so what it basically means, we're still in the midst of while people are trying to talk about reopening New York and restarting the economy and all those buzzwords, we're still, knee deep in the midst of a crisis, and no one has come up with a solution to the testing problem. Being, there's no way we could really eradicate this without mass testing, and we need it first and most critically in the neighborhoods that have been most hit. And that's, it's definitely East Harlem here in Harlem. To a lesser extent, it's the rest of Harlem, because if it's hot in East Harlem, it does, there's no border between East Harlem and the rest of Harlem. So we can anticipate that, once things relax, things can flare up again here, and the Bronx is almost all hot spots.
Hey, Bob,
So,
Bob, this is
yes.
me. Benoit too says, unfortunately, these brainwashed Trumpers still won't budge. And I say that only because they just showed flash the picture of people violating the voluntary stay at home, not the mandatory going to get locked up stay at home, the voluntary stay at home, who are violating. It was a young white lady with her head out the window screaming at a stoplight, and there was a doctor in a medical uniform with his mask on standing in front of her car. Like the lady did in Tiananmen Square. The doctor was standing in his doctor green uniform with his arm folded, standing in front of the car and looking at it. It was a great, what a picture.
Wow, I gotta see that. That's really, you actually got to be a pretty special brand of stupid to be yelling at a doctor for basically doing his job.
That's what he said. But he said that because my daughter actually says that she thinks the president is a special kind of stupid.
Oh yeah, well, I think he's extra special. I think he's in a class by himself. But it's dangerous for us to completely put him in the category of stupid, because he's very, very strategic. He's ignorant about things related to science, but when it comes to grabbing power, when it comes to mastering the tools of fascism, he's really at another level, something that we've never seen, because at every turn, he's basically, used it to amass more power. And, we're dealing with a situation where we have 3 tainted branches of federal government, because, the Congress is a little bit more functional in that we at least took back control of one house, but it's weak control. And the Senate is obviously will do anything he asks for. And the Supreme Court pretty much will do anything he asks for. So, we still have the road to getting him out is still a real one. It's got some potholes and landmines in it. And, I'm really, really afraid that even if he loses the election, there's going to be some sort of grab for power, which, he decides, I'm just not leaving, take me to the Supreme Court, see if I care, type of thing.
Oh, I got 4 letters for that. WACO. Let's go ahead and do that, because we already see what happens when the government and the army decides that you're not coming out. WACO stands for we ain't coming out, and you saw what they did to them. You saw what they did to the people of Philly. They will bomb and burn anybody that defies the right, the Constitution. So I'm not concerned about him not leaving, because he needs to have, because they will deal with that. It'll get dealt with.
Yeah, but there's one flaw in your logic.
There's no flaw in my logic.
There's a flaw in your logic. The flaw in your logic is that those people who stormed Waco, they still work for him right now. And technically,
they have no allegiance to him, Bob. He doesn't pay them. They have allegiance to whoever's running the government. So when the government says he's not running the government, we're gonna see a test. Now maybe you're right, and maybe they will decide to go with him. They will have a different kind of country. Okay, that's a fact. So
listen, I hope you're right. you know, but all I know is on November 3rd, if we vote him out, on November 4th, he's still the president. They still work for him, you know, and so he's got from November 4th to like January 20th to figure out how to do something stupid.
Well,
So,
hey Bob, if people passively decide that they're going to go along with somebody like that, then we're all going to be in trouble.
well, we're already in trouble. That's what I'm saying.
We're going to be in bigger trouble. That's what
So
you're saying.
I'm just, you know, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. That's a worst case scenario, because another 4 years of this, man, it really is going to be the Hunger Games meets the Walking Dead, you know. And here's some of the other troubling signs for me. You notice now the battle between the federal governments and states, and so it started with him basically playing The Apprentice and making states vie for his favor to get needed supplies. And then the counter to that is that the states are starting to band together, recognizing that they're not going to get them. And so you have this cluster up here, and you've got different clusters of states that are working regionally. And then, so think about this. And so in Illinois, Illinois has a billionaire governor named Pritzker, and in order for him to get N90, he ordered a bunch of N95 masks and had them secretly flown into Chicago because he was afraid of them being basically absconded by the federal government. That's crazy. But what else is crazy? Massachusetts, they had some doctors that located some N95 masks, and I guess it was somewhere down south. So they sent the truck to get it. They were afraid that, you know, nowadays dealing in PPE is like a drug deal. You got to send somebody, you got to have your boys. Like, are they really going to have the goods? They sent the sample, but the samples could be fake. So send Joe and John in the truck. So they send the guys in the truck, but they also send them in a food refrigerated truck because they want to hide the fact that they're moving N95 masks because they're afraid of getting stopped by the feds and them trying to confiscate it. And the feds did stop them, and they did try to confiscate it, and they had to call their Congress people to intervene and all this stuff. Yeah. But it's like, are you kidding me? You have states that literally have to go to all sorts of backflips to just get resources from one part of the country to the other. So this battle between the federal government and the states, we haven't had this kind of wrestling for power since the Civil War. Yeah. So these are all very, very, and you combine that with this guy, you know, basically sending dog whistles to the troops that now it's time, you know, the whole Charlottesville, Virginia thing was like a practice run. And now it's like, you know, let's, you know, need you guys to come out and show force and bring your guns, it's some really disturbing things that are happening on the national level. And, you know, it requires us all to just be on our guard and be on our toes. Like I said, don't just look at the health crisis. We've got to look at the crisis behind it as well. And we have to be vigilant about that.
Bill, you were mentioning earlier why you thought some of the people out there violating the voluntary stay-home thing.
Yeah, you know, I was kind of reacting to and reprising a report that I saw on Joy Reid over the weekend, where she kind of drilled down with some specificity as to who was actually out there lobbying to reopen the various states. And a couple of things she noted. One, the people were all white. I think I saw one black guy with an umbrella in one of the shots. But essentially, the people were all white. And in addition to that, according to Joy's report, they were predominantly business owners, They were not workers looking to get back to work. They're business owners who were looking to make sure that their employees went back to work to help earn them, the businesses, their money. And I thought that was a refreshing look and an analytical perspective that I had not seen overlaid on that whole movement. And I also just wanted to kind of trip, excuse me, on what you just said, Bob, about the Civil War aspects of what's going on, states versus federal, government, state versus state. I think that's going to be exacerbated even more when the tsunami that you talked about, the economic tsunami, comes down, and you've got economic depression and lack of economic resources, which I think is going to get much worse than it is right now today. The recovery is going to be extremely slow. You're going to have massive amounts of businesses that are not going to be able to come back at all. And as you guys know, when folks don't have money in their pockets or food on the table, they're susceptible to all kinds of manipulation. And my fear is that that's going to just kind of feed into what you were just describing as a potential civil war that is brewing. And I don't know where that's going to go. With or without Trump's getting put out this fall, that is still going to be there. So that's still going to be an issue that we're going to have to grapple with, for the next, I don't know how long, probably a decade or so before we come out of this. How long did it take to come out of the Great Depression? It took World War II to come out of the Great Depression.
Right.
Well, but it also took a Democratic president who put in some things that helped us. That's right. So that's also another critical reason why voting is going to be so important, because we're going to need, it's just like it always is, the cycle, the Republicans, just keep doing a grab, and they crap up the economy, and then somebody's got to go in there and fix it after them. That's what brought Bill Clinton into office, was what brought Obama into office, and I guess that what will hopefully bring Joe Biden into office.
It's true. Bob, I think those are two excellent perspectives. But I would say again that we should look at what they're fighting against. One thing that we all know about life is that life always moves forward. There's no reverse in life. There's no reverse gear in life. It just keeps forward. So so they can say all of those things and do all those things. But again, I always go by what you see. I seen the militia guys. We all seen them. We've seen them at Wounded Knee. We've seen this before, and all of those things were quelled when people got tired of this shit. Okay, and that's what's gonna at the end of the day happen, because it's all about the people. Whatever the people decide to have, the people decide that they're not going to go. I'm talking about the whole collective, and those people that you saw we see out there, they're a small subset of everybody. And if everybody decides, or the majority of the people decide that they're not going to cooperate with anything, all of this is over with. So let's be clear on that. That's just my opinion. So all of this is going to be over with if everybody decides for some reason or another they ain't going to cooperate with nothing. One of the greatest skills, or one of the greatest attributes that we have in our culture is that we cooperate with each other. And those guys, even those people who are out there protesting, they were protesting under the rules of protest. They weren't out there being reckless and violating any laws or anything. They were out there protesting as is their right to do. So we got to understand that this is all part of the game. And when you have a game like this, the people who are the leadership in times like this, the economic tsunami that Bob's talking about, the things that Stu was talking about in terms of what will happen when people don't, in the culture will act crazy. All of those things are exasperated.
Well, to quote the great George Carlin, never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups.
Absolutely, absolutely. But remember this again. I'm just going to make the point. One of the things that makes our country and this culture great is that we all cooperate. They would have you believe that we don't do that, but we do. And even though those people out there doing foolish stuff that you would not, that most normal people wouldn't do, none of them were violating any laws, man. So this is how the country is set up so people can do these kinds of things. What I'm saying is that the majority of the people in the culture will stand up because there'll be a reason to stand up. And they will put it, like you said, Bob, they will elect and put it in there who are going to do it, do the right thing, or do what they want. And if they don't, I'm pretty sure that that whoever's in charge, they have room to remove people, and they will, trust me, they're not going to lose a multi-trillion-dollar economy for Donald Trump or any of the people that are in charge. They will all band together and turn on him like they turned on Julius Caesar.
That's very cinematic, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Cecil B. DeFrazier here.
That's
Hey,
Listen, we got somebody in the chat room. Benoit True said, he said they're definitely trying to start some trouble. I'm just talking to Civil War. He's definitely trying to start one. You said that right. Biden is leading Trump in everything except economy. And then he says they should have been arrested for illegal assembly. And then I'm saying that, they weren't illegally assembled. They were very, very stupid. Very much. In fact, when you watch the people in Michigan, it reminded me of the Black Panthers storming the state.
Of course, of course they copied our playbook. That's how they do. But let's put it this way: in 2020, if it was a bunch of black militias showing up on those steps with automatic weapons, peaceably assembling according to our constitutional rights, they would have definitely called in the National Guard, the local SWAT, somebody, and some of us would have died because Black Lives Matter couldn't even protest unarmed without being called terrorists. So all that talk about liberty and tyranny and blah blah blah, just code words. Oh, and by the way, Stu, I did see one black person out there last week complaining about the tyranny of having to go to Whole Foods and a cop asking her to wear her mask, and that was the lovely and talented Candace Owens. and Kanye let the world know that he would actually vote this time. So our black brethren who've been disinvited to the cookout did show up this past week.
Let me bring in Rolando, because Rolando he went to pick up the day last week or whatever, when he was picking up the medical, when he was out driving around in his car, he went into a medical place. Rolando,
right, yeah. Yeah. So last week I had to go to pick up some medicine from my mother, and it was at a medical facility. So the minute I walked in the building, they had on hazmat outfits and everything, and they had me take a temperature test before I even walked into the lobby.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And they were practicing on some other kinds of temperature testing, like your forehead with a little computer readout, but they didn't have it working yet, so they gave me a regular disposable temperature test, and said it was okay for me to come in. After everything was done and said. But I was telling Doug, I said that's the way they're going to use that as a way of opening up businesses, or like at least getting people in. You know what I mean? They're going to start trying to differentiate who has a temperature and who has it and who doesn't. You know.
So tell me about my argument with you about that.
Yeah. I mean, what Doug was bringing up is that, you know, once that's in effect, then there'll be people that can say, "Hey, you got it," and come with us. You know what I mean? And you know, because I think was it in China that when they did discover someone with it, they put them in a hotel for like 14 days, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could only hope that they would. Yeah. Put me in the Conrad for 14 days.
More like the lockup.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know it's not going to be that way. You know.
No, I know. You know, not with Trump at least.
That was my argument with Rolando. Still, I was saying that as a person who has been incarcerated, if you have the quarantine police, and then somebody could decide that you had how are you going to argue so I don't have a fever? If you think
Well, the irony here is this is where you're siding an argument with the militia boys up there up north, because that's basically their argument is about the tyranny and the infringement on their freedoms. And so there is something to be said on both sides of that argument, but in the case of an emergency, it's obviously, you know, this is an emergency that affects everyone, whether they want to agree with it or not. And so that was the reason for, you know, the emergency powers. But the problem we also know historically is that those situations are always used as a land grab, and usually once freedoms are taken, they usually don't come back. And we can think about the Patriot Act stuff that was enacted after 9/11 that allowed the freewheeling mass surveillance net that we now live under with impunity. So you know, they're all troubling and complicated issues, which is the other reason why Trump and company like to delve in simplicity. You know, they make it simple because they're dealing with, you know what to protect us for everything? A wall. We just build a wall. The wall will keep everything out. Well, walls don't keep out viruses, we found, you know, especially a wall that has gaping big gaps in it and doesn't actually surround the whole country. It's the most ludicrous idea ever, but it's simple and it's easy to communicate. And it has it's a highly visible symbol.
Well, so listen, one of the things that sparked the conversation with me and Rolando, not because of my paranoia about locking up, there was a video that they showed from the guys in China where they were taking people's temperature and they was knocking on people's door, taking the temperature, and they said this guy had a temperature, and they dragged him out of his crib, man. They dragged the guy out of his house and said, "You're coming with us." And when I saw that, I said to myself, wow, what a wonderful example, what a wonderful way to abuse that. And if you think that the people here, particularly some of these Republicans, some of those maniacs that you were talking about, we can trust them, I don't know about that. And secondly, Bob, the other thing about the militia, they interviewed one of the militia people who was out in Michigan, and here's what the guy said. The reporter said, "Well, are you against any of the things that's going on?" He said, "I don't want them even testing me because they're going to put a microchip in your nose, and they'll be able to find out wherever you're going." He actually really said this. He said that. He said the reason why he didn't want to get tested, this is one of the militia dudes, because the government's going to put a microchip in everybody's nose to follow them around. Then they cut to a lady, an older white lady, she looked like a librarian from Minnesota, and she said, "Nope, the COVID flu is a hoax." He said, the guy said, "Well, over 35,000 people died." She said, "They didn't die from that." He said, "I want Minnesota open." So you're dealing with a preponderance of people who believe whatever they believe.
And part of it is because of the vast misinformation network that is now social media, and as we know has been jacked by foreign state actors acting badly. So there's a lot of misinformation, but there's a lot of misinformation mixed up with real information. So there's a very, very big distrust of 5G. And, you know, at the far end of the spectrum is saying the 5G actually triggered an engineered virus. Now, I have no concrete evidence that is the case, but there are disturbing aspects around 5G. And so people deal with some of the truth aspects and mix it up in there. And then that's how conspiracy theories are concocted, because whatever you don't have an answer for, you can just fill the rest of it in with conjecture. And so, you know, everything from it's Trump and the pharmaceutical cartel. No, it's Fauci and the pharmaceutical cartel. It's Obama and the, you know. So there's you can find whatever flavor of conspiracy theory that you want, but those conspiracy theories are all rooted in very, very real fears, and I think those fears are motivated by things that make people on all sides of this issue uncomfortable, and that's why it's so tricky, because there are definitely things that some of the crazies say that I find myself, yeah, I'm worried about that too. You know, so I think, you know, we have to figure out, chart our own course out of this. And
let me ask you a quick question, Stu, because he said Stu.
Yeah.
So, as you know, of course, you and I are wireless engineers and practitioners. So when you hear people, so and like Bob said, when you hear people misinform people about 5G, what comes to mind for you, Stu?
Well, you know, what comes to mind is what Bob just said, just the high level of misinformation out there in social media, and the bad actors, particularly foreign, i.e. Russia and others, that are working just to undermine the country and to sow all kind of discord. But let me speak for a moment to what underlies that whole 5G thing. And you know, we have heard for decades, since the advent of the mobile phones, about the possible negative effects of electromagnetic radiation on the body.
mm-hmm.
And even before mobile phones, with the electricity and power lines. And there is, in fact, an effect, electromagnetic energy on the body, which is 90+% water. And, you know, no one really knows what the long-term effect is. I can't imagine, you know, that there is an immediate effect. That's the ludicrousness of that conspiracy theory.
Right.
We rolled out 5G last month, and now the virus hit. I mean, you know, it takes probably decades for the radiation to have the effects on people. But that said, I read a piece, and I think I forwarded it to you, Doug, by a physician who has a column. Dr. McCall is his name. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Bob.
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Yeah. He did a piece on 5G and on radiation in general, and he cited a sunspot event that happened in the 1700s, and how that coincided with the big outbreak of some viral epidemic at the time. And he hypothesized that sunspot epidemic, I mean the sunspot event, had an effect upon the human immune system and its ability to fight infections.
Well, let me follow on with that, because I saw a video by a doctor who has another theory that I think dovetails with that. So he went back and pretty much went through every pandemic going back to the 1918, and said that all of them were preceded by some sort of electromagnetic event. So the pandemic of 18 was preceded by kind of the general, you know, wiring of electricity in the country. And then he went back and talked about, you know, when radar was introduced widespread in World War II, and that preceded some pandemic, and he worked his way all the way back, all the way up to 5G, and he was able to kind of pinpoint a breakout and pinpoint it, and so his theory was that there's something about the spread of electromagnetic radiation that maybe causes some sort of weakness that allows these things to proliferate.
Mhm.
Network control. Loud and clear. I feel in network control.
Okay, my sense, Bob, is that the electromagnetic energy probably does have long-term negative effects upon us, and
Right.
it's not in the interest of industry and the economy to really study that thoroughly.
Right.
Which is maybe why we haven't seen a whole lot of reports published or promoted in any significant way. But I don't believe that you can have a short-term effect. You talk about the wiring of America over decades. So it would have taken, it may have taken decades of the electrifying of the country in order to, weaken folks' immune system for the 1918 pandemic. But don't forget that pandemic was worldwide. And
yes.
I don't think the world had been electrified in any significant way at that early date in the early 1900s. So I would question that.
Well, I'm going to send you that. I'm going to find that video and send it to you.
I'd like to see that.
Give you a chance to see it. But I'll just say that the doctor was very credible. He wasn't a tin hat wearer. So it's definitely worth a listen to. Like all these things, I'll listen to anybody who is reasonably following a hypothesis based on science and evidence. Even if it's unconventional, you have to listen to it. But some of the folks that they like to jump way in the deep end of the conspiracy pool, and it's the Illuminati, and the 7 gnomes who live in Switzerland, and Obama, Hillary Clinton,
don't forget Obama,
and George Soros,
and
Bill Gates. And Bill Gates, of course, but that one's real.
Go on YouTube at WEBT Afteraction Report 2.20.20. That's today.
Does Wally know that today is 4.20.20?
He's getting there.
Yeah, hey.
little lag.
I have to go back to February 20th and do the last 2 months all over again. I really don't.
God forbid.
I pass.
Hey, Rolando. Is Rolando still there? Rolando, you still there? No, I guess he's. He might be have went to the thing. When he was talking about the thing about the temperature thing, that was the last week when he was when his car.
Hey,
Rolando, I just wanted to remind everyone that last week when you were going to get that medicine, that was when we were watching. You left the camera inside your car, and the car was sitting still for a while. That's when you went into that building, correct? Highly technical. It's highly technical. Hey, Rolando, did you hear any of that? No.
Hey.
Oh, say what, Rolando?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was muted for a minute.
Yeah, so I'm saying that I just wanted to confirm this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So the time when you were in there and they were taking your temperature and everything, that was while you were doing the streaming from your car last week on this broadcast. When you left the camera inside your car and you left it on, you went somewhere. Was that was the time when they was trying to take your temperature, right?
No. That was
okay.
that was the first. No, this is the second time that I went to a place that my mother gets her medication from.
Okay.
Yeah, and she gets it at a medical facility, that has a pharmacy in the building. So yeah, it's like one of those outpatient facilities, So
okay.
yeah.
I wanted to be clear because I thought it was the time when you went in there and that they had did it. So this was another whole separate time when they had the hazmat. Because remember I told you my daughter sent me a picture of a video of some guys in a school bus here in Harlem going into an apartment building all in hat masks and they were spraying the building down. Wow. And they was wondering what the hell that was. And I was telling her those are the virus troopers. That's what I told her they were, So I'm just wondering if anybody else has experienced anything of that nature like that. No, I guess no.
I have not. I'm making trips to the hospital every couple of weeks. So one of my family members is going in for treatment, and she gets checked at the door. She goes in with her mask and with the gloves on, but she gets checked right in the lobby before she can take more than 3 steps into the hospital. She gets her temperature taken, and they won't let her go any further until they've confirmed that she does not have a temperature. And so, and they won't let any visitors in. I can't go in with her. I want her to go in and be with her. They're not allowing that, as you all probably know. And so they're screening very tightly who comes in and what condition that you're in before you're allowed access.
But to what we were discussing very lightly earlier, they did not say what would happen if you did have a temperature, other than you wouldn't be allowed to come into the building.
No, the hospital, you would just be denied entrance. You would be not.
So they would not
deny treatment.
Would not be the thing like I seen in China where the guy when his temperature was up, they grabbed him and forcibly took him. It was like they brought 5 guys in hazmat and forcibly took him to the quarantine location.
No, well, we also have to, China. That was standard operating procedure before this crisis. So
I understand that. I get that. Benoit says Google and this is Benoit. So this is Mark. No, this is Benoit. Benoit says Google and Apple are teaming up to create an app that tracks COVID-19 carriers, places of travel, and will alert those who might be exposed to that person. And then Mark says feeling of tingling is real. I can imagine it could. Mark also says, could this be 5G? And Benoit says, there were 2 people who died in my building behind the virus, yet my landlord hasn't sterilized any part of the building. So, when people are fearful, and any of you guys remember when Stu and I know Stu remembers distinctly because he was the one that called me and alerted me when they had the 911. We heard some of the craziest things you ever want to hear when people are afraid, they talk and do crazy things, man. And we heard a lot of crazy talk after the 911. And this is, right now there's 5 or 6 times or almost 10 times more people going towards 15, more people who have died than that. And at least when you had Junior there, he was pointing in the direction. I just wanted to say one thing that was on my mind. It's interesting to me, and I mentioned this to Rolando when we were talking last night. It's interesting to me that when things happen, not everyone, but people start devolving into what I call they think they're Nostradamus. They're trying to figure out why something is, or trying to explain why particular things is happening. And I made the case to Rolando, who has 2 daughters and have kids, and I said, hey, when your kids are little, when there's a conflict and they start telling you why it happened, you don't want to hear that. But yet, when we as adults see that there's a conflict, we want to try to explain why these things are happening. I'm just wondering, why do you think that's why that phenomenon exists? To anybody, just throwing that out there.
Oh, we got to figure out human psychology on this call too. Don't we have enough on our plate? Because I said so. That was the answer we got when we were kids.
That's right.
There you go. Where is this because I said so person? Where's the adult because I said so person when we need them?
Well, that's the problem because we were supposed to have an adult in the White House, but we got a kid.
That's pretty good.
That's where we got screwed up.
Yeah, that's true. You'll get no pushback on that one. Now, what about this thing that Benoit is talking about with the Google and the Apple and the COVID-19 trying to figure out who's got what?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I read a story, Bob, you might have seen it, about an app that they have in China that they're using, I think it's China, that they're using for people's phones, where you're getting your status, whether your temperature, your condition is being put onto your phone on your device, and is color coded as to what condition you're in. And they use that to control movement and access to facilities and places. So to me, I mean, that's a potential fear as to where that might evolve to.
Well,
Bob,
first of all, let's acknowledge that China has the state-of-the-art lack of privacy and electronic monitoring of its citizenship.
Yes.
So whatever China is doing, it's definitely probably the most efficient thing you could use for a pandemic, because controlling a pandemic is really about the data and being able to see where the hotspots are and shutting them down. So for pandemic use, it's great, but for everything else, including liberty and privacy, it's horrific. And so I am leery of anything we do that just jumps on China, because I've always felt that the powers that be in this country look across to China and like, wow, I wish we had that. I mean, they take the facial recognition game to a whole nother level. And I'm sure their cell phones are just probably just like having a microphone, you know, straight to their version of the NSA. And I mean, we already to a certain extent have that, but there are at least a few low hurdles that they put in place to keep it from going totally unchecked. Although I guess our man Snowden might tell us something differently. But yeah, I'm very, very leery of the types of draconian measures that they use. You know, but you know, nobody can argue with their efficiency. You know?
Yeah, well, Bob, the point that I wanted to just kind of highlight is that, just as you mentioned, 911 was the trigger for the Patriot Act and all kinds of mass surveillance being okay. I'm concerned that today the pandemic will open the door for all kinds of mass status monitoring and additional surveillance in the name of controlling the pandemic. And once the pandemic is over, there's not going to be any rollback of that kind of surveillance.
Right.
I just want to interject something right there. I think what really makes something for our consideration is that I saw Obama made a speech, and I think we all did it 2014, and he was saying a thing that I thought was even smarter. Get ahead of it. Get ahead of the pandemic, because right now we're wallowing in nothing being done, and you're in it now. You want to have this, as they say in basketball and sports, you want to have the scouting report, and you want to prepare and get ahead of it. And we're in this now because there was a lack of preparation, no scouting report, and people who didn't believe that science really mattered. And so you have to get ahead of these things so that people are not subjected to these kinds of draconian things that we're talking about.
It's even worse than that, because it wasn't a lack of preparation. It was a removal of all the preparation that was already in place. And
oh wow, that's even better. Thank you, Bob.
There's a program they had that was put in place as a result of the things that Obama left called Predict. And so Predict was a program where they said, okay, coronaviruses are a threat. Let's go to all the regions where these viruses exist in animals. We're going to measure the viruses that exist in the animals, the bats, the pigs, whatever, and we're going to sequence them, and we're going to look at them and see which ones we think have the potential to jump from, you know, from animal to human. And so that program was defunded in September of 2019. And literally it was in China. So they had a program that says, okay, you blame it on the bats. We're going to go out and measure the viruses in the bats and the pigs, you know, see which ones have the most potential and stop them, you know. So you can't get more prepared than that. You guys still there?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, there were many steps along the way that this administration actively took out every control that they had and left us defenseless. So, but it's not just the administration. I don't understand how private industry was not more prepared, specifically the medical industry.
Correct.
Why are we so?
They're profit driven. They're profit
That's right.
driven. They're not care driven. They're not health driven. They're profit driven. I thought it was really interesting to hear Cuomo talk about how all the hospitals in New York don't talk to each other. How there's no sharing of information as to supplies, as to hospital load, as to anything that's going on, and how this pandemic has forced now there to be a network put in place of communication, sharing of information that probably should have been there all along. But when the individual hospitals are driven by profit for their own particular operating center, you know, there's no incentive to do that. So I think that's the answer to why private industry has dropped the ball, because they don't care. They care about their profits.
Stu, from the chat room, guys. Vanoit says, she's chiming in agreeing with you guys, which is the reason we all need to be involved with all legislation being passed and start informing the public at large. He thinks that, you know, he's saying that we should be uber involved in the legislation. I think we all probably agree on that. And the information should be given out to the public, which argues for, in my mind, why are the politicians, why don't we have mandatory voting? And why aren't the politicians using the public broadcast network so that there's no price, so there's no economics involved? And why aren't they using that instead of doing the commercial thing, which allows us to be, which is why we have Fox News, or the propaganda network, as they say. Anybody got any comments on that?
Well, I mean, I think
the answer to, go ahead, Bob.
No, well, I was just saying, you know, we're seeing late stage toxic capitalism really rearing its head across the board.
Right answer.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the bottom line is, you know, there was a myth about America that was somewhat true. Okay, so let's take out the part about the whole economy being built on slavery and labor and exploitation. We know about that part, but as Americans, we don't like to talk about that. But we can talk about, there was, this economy created standards. You know, we used to set the, you know, we took the lead in industrialization and modernization and technology, and we set the standards for the world, and the US standards became global standards for packaging and technology and safety standards. That was a real thing. And then it's just gotten to a point where there's been less and less in that, and more of, now we can run global multinationals. We can squeeze every dime of profit in these publicly traded companies, and we can literally remove gradually all the standards that developed have been removed and specifically accelerated during the Trump administration. And so we've got mass food distribution of toxic food. You know, we have a medical system that has gaping gaps and vast numbers of people who are not covered. You know, we have environmental disasters going all through this country, particularly water issues throughout the whole country, and toxic hot spots all over the country. And so the promise of American industry, the dream has turned into a nightmare. I mean, it's been a nightmare for Black people much longer, but we had a period, at least kind of a grace period, where we were at least, starting to get into the middle class, and we've done that. We've got a body of Black folks who have grown up middle class, but one step away from it. But now we're all stuck into this matrix where what we're getting from America is toxic on so many levels. But we do get iPhones, and we do get 500 channels, and now we have the internet. So we have this vast network of distractions, from video games to free porn. I mean, you can stay.
Hey, Bob, don't cross the line, Bob. Don't cross the line, Bob.
I didn't say a bad word. I'm talking the truth.
I know you are. This kid.
Come on. I know. Y'all grew up. We all grew up in an era where you had to pay for those magazines.
That's exactly right.
When you can find them. Early on, as kids, you couldn't even find them.
Yeah,
okay,
you got really young kids.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Stuart, I got a sobering report. As of 10:10 a.m. this morning, 40,698 deaths in America. 40,698 deaths. 425 deaths worldwide, to go along with Bob's description of a nightmare. 756,374 confirmed cases of COVID. Just to let you know about to confirm your nightmare scenario, Robert.
And that's all within a compressed time frame of maybe 3 months.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And
Vanoy, one more thing. One more from the chat room. Vanoy says it's part of the cog of greed. If you cure people, the whole healthcare system will not exist. Thank you, Vanoy, too.
Well, back to Bob's point about toxic capitalism, the healthcare system is not designed to create health, it's designed to treat disease. So it's really upside down. And that so much of the way the economy and the culture, the society has evolved is that way. And I think, to Bob's point, ultimately you look back and it's a capitalistic dynamic that has made it so.
Okay,
yeah.
so go ahead, Bob.
But the healthcare system didn't used to be profit. All that privatization came in with Reagan, I believe. And now it's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to just ask Rolando if he got any words. We're going to get ready to wrap up. We're going past our time. I'm going to work my way back. Go ahead, Rolando. You got any last comments you want to make before we? What's your last words before we wrap this up?
No. I think everything was very interesting to listen to. It's a fearful future that we're heading into. But no, I don't have anything other than that to say.
Okay.
Rolando, you look very sharp in the suit and tie. Last week we saw you out on maneuvers, man. You look like a Navy SEAL or something like that, right?
Yeah, I know.
Riding through the empty streets, keeping your eye out, got your mask on. Was like, yes,
I know.
A brave brother out there.
I had a couple of instances. People thought I was some kind of DEA agent or something, or because of that black on black.
Right.
Well, hey, Rolando, hopefully we'll get you next week. You'll be back out on the road and showing us some of that good stuff.
He's going to be in a tuxedo next week. Yeah, the virtual casino, ordering shaken not stirred martini.
I hear you.
You just remind me of something, Bob. Before you came on, Stu and I was mentioning that the stimulus package, and they had announced that they were outing some of the corporations that got the money for the small business, and three restaurant chains got money, including Shake Shack, and all in the state they got $10 million from the thing, even though one of those chains had made $42 million last year. Shake Shack, for everybody's information, Shake Shack gave the $10 million back. Stu, you were saying last word for you.
I would just like to let folks know that these broadcasts, as well as broadcasts from the Wisdom Table and from Community and Technology, are all aggregated on one particular site, and that is safeandsmart.org. That's safe, letter N, smart.org. Go there and stay up to date on all the latest information. These broadcasts, the Wisdom Table interviews with doctors, medical people, legal folks are there, as well as the Community and Technology and other information and resources to help keep you safe. Safeandsmart.org.
All right, great.
As always, Bob, you got the last word, Bob.
Stay safe. That's 2 words.
Good words. Good words, Bob.
It could have been words. It could have been words with an S, Bob. Didn't have to be words. Okay, but I'm just going to say, as Brother Leroy always says in the broadcast that we do, that I want to say God bless everybody who's on the broadcast, and God bless you, all you guys, and God bless your family, and hope everybody does stay safe. And remember, as we always say, if you tune in next week, you just might learn something. So subscribe to the channel, and if you can, and we'll see you everybody next week. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Doug, next week, can we see you on camera?
Yeah.
Mystery man.
Yeah, of course, but you know.
Because we are watching us.
I like that, Bob. Okay, Bob, I'm in, Bob. Oh, well,
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. Later.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, bro.
All right, man.
Bye.